All right, we're going to start chapter 3 today of Raising Children God's Way. If you have a copy of the book, we will begin chapter 3, and we will look to get through a good portion today of the study. But why don't we go ahead and read from Ephesians chapter 6, the first 4 verses. Ephesians chapter 6, we will read verses 1 through 4. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 1. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother. This is the first commandment with a promise, that it may go well with you and that you may live long in the land. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and the instruction of the Lord. So, today, I want us to begin considering in chapter 3 what Lloyd-Jones entitles chapter 3, Discipline and the Modern Mind. He says on page 35 of Raising Children God's Way that we have... Oh no, I put a misquote there. No, it isn't. The bottom of the first paragraph, he says, we have a unique opportunity, I feel, at such a time as this, for showing the Christian biblical balanced view concerning this vexed problem of discipline. Now, we'll pause there for a second. We've been considering the breakdown in the family structure, right? And the breakdown of the authority figures of the parents to the children. And we've been looking at that the last couple of weeks. And so here he says, with this, there is a problem of discipline in modern society. And he says, we have a unique opportunity here. He goes on, this urgent problem is not confined, of course, to the problem of children. The same principle is involved in the modern attitude to crime and to war, and to punishment in every shape and form. It is a part of the same larger and general problem. And so here, we're going to come to the fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. So we're going to start talking about discipline. But before we get into the specific Christian discipline of how Christian parents should instruct and discipline their children and raise their children, he kind of presents a bigger view here and says, we've got a big problem. And actually, let's zoom out from just the family. Let's look at the world. He says in government, what does he say? Crime, war, punishment in every shape and form, the modern attitude is a problem toward this. And so what I want to do this morning is look at a couple of the errant ways of the modern attitude. We'll look at the past attitude that Lloyd-Jones brings up in the Victorian era, and then look at the modern attitude more in depth and see what is the problem of discipline today. Where has modern society gone wrong in discipline? And then maybe we'll get to it this week, but perhaps we'll do it more fully in a couple of weeks from now on the biblical Christian teaching with regard to this matter. So let's look first at the assertion that Lloyd-Jones makes, number 1. You all have a handout, right? Do you see that assertion? What does that assertion say? What is assertion number 1 that Lloyd-Jones makes?
There has been a complete revolution in the attitude of people towards this matter of discipline.
Okay, so a complete revolution. It's a complete change. Now, what he goes into, something we may not be as familiar with, is the Victorian era. I mean, obviously, Lloyd-Jones was in England. He was in London and Wales. And so, hey, good morning, sister. Good morning. He says, we might not be so familiar with this Victorian era, but Lloyd-Jones says, and it's the same modern mindset in England and today as it was in Lloyd-Jones' time in England as we see today, and we'll see that. But they were reacting toward what he calls the Victorian era, and it was brutal, it was repressive, it was inhuman. Is anybody familiar with Victorian discipline, how that would be? Or is that kind of a concept you've not really... Michael says a little bit. Nobody really? Not. You have, Daniela? Yeah. What does that make you think of when you think of the Victorian era and discipline? Dictatorship. All right. So this is like the really strict staunch, severe, harsh. You know, they have Victorian schools where the kids are getting whipped with the yardstick and all this stuff. Listen to, I don't know if I have it there on the handout. There was, as I was studying a bit of the Victorian era, there was a website called the Victorian School, and it's based in England, I believe, just giving a lot of historical knowledge on this. And this is something that they write. So this is about the Victorian era. One of the things that fascinates modern children who visit our Victorian school is the discipline. It seems to me, this is the person on Victorian School website writing this, it seems to me that modern pupils have little or no concept of the ways in which children were disciplined in years gone by. The first thing to say is that discipline was very strict. In some ways it had to be, because school classes were often large and were led by one teacher with assistants from monitors or pupil teachers. But there also was a belief that children had to be trained to do good. Some of these beliefs came from religious views. Christian teaching said that people were born with a tendency to do wrong. Now that's very important. So in this previous discipline, the Victorian era, they had the assumption children are born with a tendency toward evil. So we've got to discipline. And therefore, they need training to do right. We're all familiar with proverbs such as spare the rod or spoil the child, and train up a child in the way he should go. When he is old, he will not depart from it. The Victorians fully embraced this thinking and believed that it was essential that children be taught to keep the rules. Now the writer says this is quite different from modern thinking, where children are taught to question everything they are taught and quickly learn how to push at the limits. In addition, parental discipline has declined and schools have had to follow the pattern. So, the Victorian era was very harsh and strict, brutal at times, inhuman, people would say at times. It was like beating the kids. They were terrified of the teacher. But it was this mindset, children, the heart is leaning towards wickedness, it's evil, it's depraved, so we need to correct and discipline. Well, modern man has reacted to that, even as this person's observing, and it's exactly what Lloyd-Jones points out. There's been a revolution, there's been a reaction to that harsh discipline, and a new climate of opinion, Lloyd-Jones says, has come in. If that's there, can someone read the new climate of opinion, that paragraph from Lloyd-Jones?
Indeed, we can describe it as a general opposition to the whole idea of justice and of righteousness, of wrath and of punishment. These terms are all abominated and are hated. In general, the modern man dislikes them radically.
Okay, so there's a whole rejection of punishment and wrath and justice. Lloyd-Jones says modern man doesn't even like those words. Have we seen that in our society? Can you attest to that in your experience? A lot of it, so some of it is just the secular modern mind. But a lot of it within Christianity, or so-called Christianity, is attributed to this dichotomy between the Old Testament God and the New Testament Jesus. Have you heard that? In what ways have you seen that compared, or people saying they're opposite? What ways have you seen that practically? Yeah, Kathleen.
A lot of people say, the Old Testament God is the God of wrath, the New Testament God is the God of love.
Right.
So there's the whole movement to just
Right.
throw out the Old Testament and just, be a New
Right.
Testament Christian.
Yeah, this term New Testament Christian. Yeah, Esteban.
When we evangelized at TAMU, on Thursday we talked to a Catholic guy and he just said, well, the God of the Old Testament's really different. We want to be more loving like the New Testament. And he said, the God in the Old Testament flooded the whole earth and, killed everybody. And then we moved on to see what the God in the New is going to do. And it's burned the whole earth. So
That's what you told him, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so there Esteban's shedding some light and saying, wait a second, you like Kathleen said, this is the God of wrath and this is the God of love. Has God changed? He says, I am the same yesterday, today, forever. And yet people want to say, no, see, the God of the Old Testament went to the Assyrians and decimated them, or the Babylonians, and destroyed them, and had the people of Israel carrying out the sword. But the God of the New Testament is Jesus. And He sits with the prostitute and the drunkard and the poor man, and He just loves them. And there's no wrath, there's no justice. Now, are there elements of truth in this? I mean, we do see the God of the Old Testament called Israel to carry out the sword, and His judgment came in the form of His people carrying out the sword.
Yeah, there was another comparison like Zoe's where they say, oh, the God in the Old Testament kills those who would work on the Sabbath. But they say, oh, look at Christ, He did not, because Christ coming was a time of mercy. It's the same God, but I would say it was a time of showing mercies and showing love. But He still has wrath and still punishes those. But it was a time of showing mercy, even though He didn't have to. So
right.
It's the same God. It's just that they say, oh, look at that changing.
Yeah. So how is that demonstrated in the God in the New Testament? That God is the same God. How do we see that demonstrated? What's the most vivid illustration of that reality? That God of the Old Testament is the God of the New Testament. The cross. Why the cross?
Because that's where all sin is paid for. I mean, sin does not go unpaid. Either we pay it for ourselves in eternity, or it's put on Jesus Christ.
Yes.
And we get His righteousness.
The pinnacle of the message of our Scriptures is God's wrath and righteous indignation being appeased in the work of Christ on the cross. And that we see that in the New Testament. We see that why Jesus came. Michael said He came for mercy. Yes, He came for mercy, but to propitiate the wrath of God. One of the big arguments, you often hear me talking about this word propitiation, right? I hope you do, and I hope you get it and learn how to spell it and understand what it means. It's a great word. And one of the arguments is the word propitiation has, in the Greek, the connotation of a personal touch. It's appeasing a person. It's not just appeasing a force. Like a thunderstorm came and the lightning rod propitiated the lightning bolt. No, that's just the forces moved. And no, propitiation means actually Jesus Christ appeased a person. It's got the personal touch, a personal component. So God was personally indignant at you. He wasn't, you hear this thing where God hates the sin but loves the sinner? Okay, there's elements of truth there, but that statement is a careless statement. You know why? Because God doesn't burn sin in hell. He burns sinners in hell. Sinners pay. God says, I hate the wicked. I have indignation every day. And if you don't repent, I will whet my sword and bend my bow, and you're going to face my wrath. God's indignation is very, very personal toward wicked sinners. And Jesus Christ appeased that. He absorbed the full weight of God's wrath and indignation against sinners. So the very essence of what Jesus did is He's appeasing the righteous wrath of God. That's in the New Testament. That's the pinnacle, that's the climax of the gospel message. God has not changed. And on top of that, like Michael said and like Esteban said, Jesus Christ did not come to condemn. He came to save, right? And He's pleading, He's weeping, come to me, sinners, come to me, please, I'll save you. Just come, I will not cast you out. Anyone who comes, I will not cast you out. Come to me. But if you refuse, and if you presume on the riches of God's kindness, forbearance, and patience, there will come a day when justice will be mediated. Is that the right word? It will be poured out. And God will bring His justice and wrath. And so the God of the New Testament is the God of the Old Testament, right? Any other thoughts on that in your interactions with people? But you've seen that thought form, haven't you? You've seen people trying to appeal. I mean, what does it say in Revelation 14? I take people there often. You realize that hell, it says in Revelation 14, hell is not a place where God is absent. It says they will be tormented day and night in the presence of the Lamb and His holy angels. Jesus pouring out justice upon the wicked. That's the Jesus of the New Testament. The Jesus, I think we read in Revelation 19, where He will come out of heaven, right? Bolting out on a white steed with His sword. His garments are dripped in blood. That's Jesus of the New Testament. Okay, the point is, they tried to make this break and say, no, that's Old Testament. We've got a New Testament Jesus. Old Testament was about discipline, justice, and wrath. Not anymore. We don't like these words, justice and wrath and discipline. That's not good. We need to change. We need to move away from discipline and justice and move toward a different way. And so Lloyd-Jones says, and as this author on Victorian School website said very insightfully, I'm not sure who they are or where their thinking is or where their standing is with the Lord, but they said very insightfully, modern thinking has the underlying supposition that human nature is good. And so, if human nature is essentially good, what becomes of the philosophy of discipline? You don't deserve it, okay?
It's not needed, really.
It's not needed. Why isn't it needed?
Everybody's good.
Their disposition is to do good, rather than
Right, their disposition. So, that's excellent. So, Father, Son, the 1-2 punch here. This is good. You say it's not needed, and why? Because their disposition is to do good. So, if my disposition is to do good, I just really want to be good. I want to do good all the time, and I did bad. Do I need to be punished? Or what would be if that's my true disposition, I just want to do good, and I do bad, what should be the response of the authority? Yeah, just remind them, no, that's not what you want to do. You want to do this. Oh, you're right. And then we go do this, right?
There's no more breaking of the law. There's mistakes.
There's no more breaking the law. There's no more sin. There's mistakes. And so look there, you have a blank space if you're taking notes. If human nature is essentially good, what becomes the philosophy of discipline? It is develop, not punish. It is educate, not control. You see that? Yeah, Kathleen.
Yeah, like you see this with the idea of, prisons. Prisons have become a place where
Yes.
you don't really punish the people, but you rehabilitate them.
Yes.
Because a long time ago, they didn't have, where you could go to school and everything in the prison. Not that that's bad, but now you see it's more of a place where you get rehabilitated. So people
Yes.
go in there and they can come out with 20 degrees.
Yes.
And when they come out, they're rehabilitated.
Yes.
Or they actually call them correctional. Yeah.
Correctional facilities. So it's saying, it's this basic supposition, mankind is good. So this man, and we're going to look at an example, so this is not an exaggeration, in fact this is less. You say, so this man who just slaughtered 15 people, he's not a bad man. He just needs to be corrected. So, sir, we don't do that. We don't slaughter people like that. So go here for a few years, learn how you shouldn't do that, and then you can come back out and you won't do that again. Because we just got to correct. We got to shift. You want to go here. You're good, and you went, oop, little off course. So let's get you back on course and keep going. You see how that permeates the correctional facilities, as we call them. They're not jails, or we call them. We just got to put people right back on the right path. Now, I want to look at an example. We'll pause here and look at this, and this might be a little long because I want to read a section, but I think it's going to be really good to solidify the modern thinking. If you have in your handout, you should have pages 3 and 4 are articles, 2 articles from the New York Times speaking of Anders Breivik. Do you guys know who Anders Breivik is? No. Anders Breivik, several years ago in 2011, went onto an island in Norway. He's a Norwegian man, and he slaughtered over 80 people, many of them young teenagers and college students. He took rifles and artillery and went on a shooting rampage. And these kids were on an island, and so they're stuck. There's like a little bridge over, and he just absolutely went through and slaughtered over 80 people. It was just a mass killing by this man. And he had an agenda. He's not insane. He's very clear-headed. We'll read here, but he's a self-proclaimed Nazi, and so he was on a mission to do battle against the infiltration of this, in his mind, wrongful thinking. And so this man has just slaughtered and massacred over 80 people. And I actually know people in Scandinavia, and the mindset of the Scandinavians towards punishment is everybody deserves a second chance. So in this man's slaughtering of these people, they say, well, no, he shouldn't get the death penalty, and he shouldn't even be put away for life. He needs a second chance. He needs to be corrected. And we can sit here aghast and go, what? 80 people? The sentence that he got was somewhere around the equivalent of jail for 3 months for each soul he killed, or each person he killed. So he got 21 years, I think he was sentenced, for the slaughter of maybe 81 or 89 people, which is around 3 months for each person. So they said, well, we've got to give this guy a second chance. We can't slap, this life sentence on him. So this is an example, a classic example. Now, this is radical in Norway. This is radical in Scandinavia, this kind of punishment. But the same mindset is here in America as well. And we're on that progression. But it shows the modern mind's thought forms of how we think toward discipline. And what I want to do, this isn't the whole article from each, but I want to read to you some sections of this article to show you how ludicrous modern man's thinking has become when approaching the evil of humanity. Think of it. This man, put yourself in that position. This is your family. These are your children. This is your wife. Your husband was slaughtered by this man because he went on a rampage one afternoon. And he's mediated a punishment of 21 years. So let's read the first one here. It's entitled from the New York Times, Anders Behring Breivik, killer in 2011 Norway massacre, says prison conditions violate his rights. He lives in a 3-room suite with windows, about 340 square feet, that includes a treadmill, a fridge, a DVD player, a Sony PlayStation, and a desk with a typewriter. He has been taking distance learning courses at his country's main university. He has access to television, radio, and newspapers. He prepares his own food, and he entered the Christmas gingerbread house baking contest at his prison. Anders Behring Breivik, the Norwegian extremist who was convicted of killing 77 people, in a bomb and gun rampage in 2011, returned to court on Tuesday to pursue his claim that his solitary confinement, albeit in cushy circumstances, violates his human rights. The hearing at which Mr. Breivik gave a Nazi-style salute has been accompanied by a new round of grief and outrage over the attacks, the deadliest violence in Norway since World War II. Mr. Breivik, 37, was convicted of terrorism in 2012 and sentenced to 21 years in prison, though he can be held longer if he is deemed a threat to society. His case has strained Norway's commitment to tolerance and compassion, which includes a penal system that strongly emphasizes rehabilitation over punishment. You see that? So they actually are being brought to a place where they're having to rethink the modern way of punishment and going, wait a second, maybe this isn't the best way forward. We want to rehab and correct. But what do we do with a monster like this, a man whose evil has demonstrated itself in the killing of 77? It goes on, Mr. Breivik has been complaining about his confinement since 2012 and at one point threatened to go on a hunger strike. Now he has sued the government, arguing that under the European Convention on Human Rights, long-term solitary confinement amounts to torture. Can you imagine even the world where a man who's committed such evils is given the ability to sue the government for punishing him because he doesn't like it? And saying, well, I've got a DVD player, a PlayStation, a cushy couch, a TV, all this stuff, but I don't like how I'm being treated. And we actually allow him to go to court and bring the case before the court, and a judge will hear it and go, okay, wait, maybe you're right, Anders. As this man has slaughtered over 77 people. Do you see the backwardsness of the thinking of modern man? God said, well, what did God say about taking a man's life? You pay for it with your own life. You take another man's life, your life is taken. Why is that? But it was just one. It was just one life.
All life is precious.
All life is precious. All life reflects the glory of its Creator. And God alone has power over to take life and to give life. And when we seek to usurp God's authority, we pay with our lives. Listen to this. Life in prison suite doesn't agree with a mass killer. Anders Behring Breivik would like butter, a new pen, more comfortable handcuffs, and a view. He goes on to talk about his killing again. It says a few lines down, he would enjoy more social interaction, according to the letter, which says he is alone with his thoughts for 23 hours and 55 minutes. Such treatment isn't human, said a lawyer for Mr. Breivik, according to agent France Presse. Mr. Breivik is denied a computer or internet access to prevent him from spreading his ideology of racial hatred, officials have said. So, anyway, you can read that in your own time, but I think the point is clear. This is descriptive of the modern man's thought process on how to correct, because we believe that the heart is actually in its core good and just needs a little slight adjustment. Do you see that? How do we see that in our school system? If anybody's familiar with the schooling system, do we see that with when it translates to parents instructing and disciplining their kids, or the schools instructing and disciplining kids? How do we see this same mindset, which is obviously, this is a huge example with Anders Breivik, but how do we see that translated into dealing with children, whether in the family or in schooling or... Yeah, sister.
A lot of money is thrown at the educational system. There's lots of techniques, all these 12-step programs and all these things, because they feel like you can reason with children and talk to them about things. And if the minute they start to get out of hand, they want to medicate them. So, yeah, pretty bad.
Yeah. Yeah, Bethany.
I went to school for education, and I mean, there was like huge segments of our classes that were devoted to behavioral plans and all this other stuff. And I mean, basically, I mean, in a lot of ways, teachers' hands are tied, even if they do have, you know, some convictions about like how children are supposed to be disciplined. But I mean, it's like everything is about positive reinforcement, positive reinforcement, positive reinforcement, and it's like you can only positively reinforce
Right.
for so long
Right.
before children just learn how to manipulate the system.
Right. Yeah, Kathleen.
You know, I personally have an experience from a few weeks ago. So there was, a few children that, were teasing James, and it was really no big deal. It really wasn't, but, the teacher took notice of that, and even James wasn't even upset. He was just like, well, what they said wasn't true, so he's shrugging his shoulders at it. But the teacher took some notice of that, and it turned into a really big deal. They took every single child out of the class and gave them individual counseling sessions, including James. The teacher called me, the counselor called me, the principal called me. They assured me that they called every single child's parents, because they said when anything like this happens, they strive to prevent. It's like preventative, because the whole bullying thing has gotten so out of hand. So if you even look at a child and say, you're stupid, because little kids say that to each other sometimes. That's wrong. It's sinful. They shouldn't say that. But it's this big, massive deal.
Right.
And I mean, I even called my mom. I said, you are not going to believe this. The principal just called me.
Yeah.
I mean, I was shocked.
Yeah.
Now,
there's elements of good in that, in the sense of sin is a big deal, right? And so we shouldn't say, oh, whatever. But the other extreme is, and what you're seeing demonstrated very clearly, is to see an outworking of sin and go, sin! They don't call it sin, but they go, something bad. We need to get them back to being perfectly good. Because their understanding is, these children are all good. And so, a bad influence is coming in, or sin is hovering. They won't call it sin, but a mistake is hovering. We need to get that out, and okay, everything's good. So we're going to talk to every child, show them, because underlying, they're all pure. And so we don't want this coming in and ruining them, so we've got to get them back to being pure. See that? Instead of saying, well, yeah, they're wicked sinners. And so we need to punish that and show them that is wrong to do that. Yeah, that's a good example. Yeah.
You see, all these things are going on in the school system, but the law hasn't changed. Texas Penal Code, actually Chapter 9, when it comes down to disciplining children, actually it's legal in Texas to discipline your children physically, right? And of course, it's left open for anybody to come up with their own physical discipline for the kids. You know, I even been convicted of it before. When I first came in, that you go to a house and mom would say, or dad, she or he just called me this, nothing but profanity. What did you do about it? Called you. Well, the penal code says this.
Right.
Well, you do what you have to do.
Yeah.
I slap him? I don't know. It's your child. Well, you do what you want to do. Are you going to arrest me? No, if it's for discipline, I can't arrest you. And it has happened many times in my 9-year tenure that I do stand right there in front of the kids and father or mother slap their kids around, and we just leave.
Yeah.
Now
that shows, so there, and we've got to say, and before we get into, we're going to get into discipline from the biblical standpoint, but there is a right way to discipline, and it's not abuse that you've witnessed, where slapping the child and things. So God mandates, discipline is correct. And so I want to just say, we're not for beating our children, neither is the Bible, and that's wrong. Now, your hands might be tied as a police officer with what the law says is okay, but as we go to God's Word, there is a proper way to discipline, which is not abusive in any standard whatsoever if someone thinks and looks at it. So the biblical Christian teaching with regard to discipline is not abuse like that. But it is interesting, I know, because sitting with CPS, they do allow physical discipline in Texas. I don't know if all states allow that or not. But
well, trying to get to it contradicts itself. School systems are teaching their kids this, and then they go home and they want to mouth off to the parents, and the parents, well, we're going to hold on to what the Texas Penal Code says, not what the school is saying. We'll call PD because they're the ones that respond, not your teacher.
Yeah.
So it just contradicts itself. It's a complete mess.
We think here in the United States, wow, man, in Norway, they're, this guy, he gets to do all this, and, he's protesting, and, he lives like a king in prison. But here in the United States, if our kids are bad, the doctor prescribes them pharmaceutical methamphetamine. You can ask any meth user if they like Adderall. Man, I love it, man. It's better than the real stuff. We give that to, we don't, but that's crazy, man. They're bad. Well, just give them some drugs. Wow.
So we've lost, because you see how, we could go into all this, how we're giving kids medicines and all this, and how we're allowing. There's an example on page 39 of a teacher you can read on your own time, where the teacher, we're now literally we're saying, well, kids, what do you want to learn? What do you want to study? And so now we have kids who don't understand math. Like, if I was given that choice, I would be even worse at math and more dependent on my iPhone calculator than I am now. But it's saying, children, you dictate what you want to do. And so a wrong supposition about the heart of a child produces all sorts of a mess. Now, an abuse, we saw in the Victorian era of that. Now, yes, maybe they had the heart of the child right, but then it led to abuse, physical, mental, emotional abuse. Well, that's wrong. So we need to say, what is the biblical Christian teaching with regard to this matter of discipline? So, why is modern man's ideology wrong? Let's go through these instances here and see, and we'll see how far we get. We might just cover the first one or two, but why is modern man's ideology wrong about discipline? What's A? Do you guys have it written down there, or are there blank spaces? Okay. The opposite of a wrong type of discipline is surely not to have no discipline at all. So we look at the Victorian era and say that's wrong. Well, we don't fly to the other extreme and say no discipline. Now, doesn't this go into every aspect of the Christian life? We need to have, my desire as the pastor of this church, when I preach and teach the Bible, is I want a people who are balanced in the Christian life. One of the greatest compliments a church can receive from two different people is to have one person say, you guys are legalistic. So, oh, okay. And then another person come and say, you guys are antinomians, which is anti-law. So to receive the charge from both sides and to hear that regularly, you go, man, we must be pretty balanced. We must be right in the middle here, have a good balance of hatred of sin, which a lot of people say legalism. You fight against sin and hate sin, you're just a legalist. We got to be holy, without which no man will see the Lord. And then, but then to have a balance of grace. The grace of God covers it all. No condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. I'm not bound by the Mosaic law and under this covenant of do this and live. I'm free in Christ. And grace, grace, grace. And people to say, you're antinomian. You've got to prescribe how people dress, what people do, where people go, what people can and can't walk. You've got to be this. You see what I'm saying? So you're going to get accused of both. It's like, man, we're probably a good balance. I want us to be balanced. I want us to be a sin-hating people, a people who are vigilant for holiness in the Christian life, striving to be like Christ, running this race, laying aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, looking to Christ Jesus. When sin crops up in your life, saying, Lord, search me, and killing it by the Spirit, putting to death the deeds of the flesh. I want you like that. And then I want us as a church to be gracious and loving, and not looking down our noses at people who haven't learned everything we've learned quite yet, and you don't do Christianity the exact same way we do, and so we're going to judge you because you see what I'm saying? Saturated in grace and love and welcoming, so people walk in here and go, this is kind of an anomaly. These people are holy and striving for holiness, and they're gracious and loving and warm and Christ-like, and they understand that grace covers love covers a multitude of sins. You see the balance? I want us to be have balanced Christian lives in every sphere. And here what he's saying is, just because we see an extreme form of bad discipline, we don't run to the other extreme of no discipline at all. We have to find a balance. So, that's the first. Why is it wrong? Because they've gone to an extreme. They've gone and said, from killing everybody for stealing and doing everything, to now saying a man can kill 77 souls and get 20 years in prison. We've flipped. Any thoughts on that before we move to B? Okay, why is modern man's ideology wrong? Any position which is law only or grace only is necessarily wrong. I kind of just touched on that, but what does that mean? I know, Daniela, you said you appreciated this part this week, right? Any thoughts on that? Why would that be wrong? A position that's law only or grace only necessarily has to be wrong. So the Victorian era was law only. You broke the rules, boom, boom, boom. Now it's just grace, grace. You just gotta correct. You steer them in the right direction. No discipline at all. Yeah, brother?
Because Jesus came with grace and truth.
So yeah.
We need truth, we need law, we need God's word, and we need
grace
also.
Grace and truth. So the hard truth and the reality of sin and punishment, but mediated in a gracious, loving way. Yeah, go ahead.
I was thinking about the law. We made law for men not to sin, not to break, but yet they sin against their own spirit. So, I'm thinking that why law and grace is not necessary. Or that's wrong. It's because we made law for them not to break the law, but yet it still causes them to sin against the Spirit.
Well, so God says that there's certain purposes for the law. Why did God give the law? And one of them is to shut men's mouths, to show them that I'm guilty. So the law is in our face showing us, you're a sinner. You're guilty, which causes us to realize we need to run to Christ for salvation. Because men have this mindset of, I'm going to keep the law, and that's how I'm going to get to heaven. And so God puts the law in front of them, and they go, I'm guilty. A lot of men will go, okay, I've got to try harder to keep it. And God's going, no, you're guilty. Run to another who has kept it, Jesus Christ. And so the law is to show us, it's like an x-ray machine. It shows us we're sick, and we don't run to an x-ray machine with a broken arm and say, okay, x-ray machine, now fix me. Then you run to the doctor, right? The law is the x-ray machine. It shows us our wicked heart, and it's to drive us to Christ to receive forgiveness and salvation in Him. So the law is given to us to show us our condition. of sinful hearts. And that's what's under attack when people say, no, we don't have a bad condition, so there's no breaking of the law. There's just a little mistake here or there. And so we need the law. We need the law to show us our condition. But then we also need the grace of Christ. If we just have law like the Victorians, there's no way out. The law is death. It says, do this and live, child. Do this and live, child. Do this and live. Do this and don't get punished. And the child perpetually fails, right? So it's just punishment, punishment, punishment. Doesn't mean we throw out the law. No, the law is good. But what's the answer? There's grace. There's the grace of Christ. And that's what, in the modern mind, we say, well, and it's not in Christ, but it's just forgive, forgive, forgive. Let's just get them back on the right path. So it's an imbalance in that way. Do you see that? Does that make sense? Okay, what's the third notion? The modern notion of discipline displays a complete misunderstanding of the biblical doctrine of God. Why do you think that is? Why is it to say no punishment, just correction? Why is that a misunderstanding of God? Okay.
I was just going to say, because God is a God of justice.
God is a God of justice. When we read of Anders Breivik, doesn't something in you cringe and go, that's not right? It's not just, right?
We all have a sense of justice where we want to see justice carried out.
Right.
So if we have that, that came from God.
Yeah. God has put that on our hearts, this justice. That's one of the reasons people say they're atheists and they deny and suppress the reality of God. But it's one of the things that you can show someone in their heart. What do you think justice is? It comes from the law of God put on your heart. This innate sense that this isn't right. That's wrong. That needs to be punished. But man misunderstands the biblical God. God is holy and just, and He must punish sin. He says, God is a holy God, a just God, a righteous God. This is Lloyd-Jones on page 46, who has made it plain that He will punish sin and transgression and has done so in history many times. All right, let's cover these last two here. There is a complete failure to realize what sin has done to man. That's the fourth reason. Lloyd-Jones says this, the simple answer to them is that man's nature is evil, that as a result of the fall, he is altogether evil. He is a rebel. He is lawless. He is governed by wrong forces, and therefore he is impervious to all appeals that may come to him. This has to do with a biblical understanding of sin. If we don't understand the pervasiveness of sin, remember we studied depravity? It's like the depravity of a man. It doesn't mean every man's as evil as he can be, right? But what does it mean? How would we balance that truth? So if man is depraved and evil, but not everybody's as evil as they could be. Hitler wasn't as evil as he could be. He showed kindness to himself, to some people around him.
I would say that at his very core, he is evil, but there are a lot of external restraints. So you have the law,
Okay.
government, and then you have God's grace.
God's grace, so there's external restraints. So then what does depravity mean? If someone's altogether evil and rebellious, what does that mean? Doesn't mean they're as bad as they could be, but it means that
we don't want anything good. Really.
We don't want anything good, and that speaks to it.
It means that every part of them is ruined, damaged by sin.
Every part of them is damaged by sin. So we saw from Romans 1, remember in Romans 1 and 3, that every aspect of humanity has been permeated by sin. The flesh, the will, the desires, the heart, the mind. All the aspects of humanity are permeated with sin. It's like the cup of water, and you take one drop of black food coloring and put it in, and it doesn't just stay there, one drop, and say, this part of me is sinful and the rest is pure water. No, it permeates all of it, right? A proper biblical understanding of the sin of mankind is that we are permeated to the core with sin. And so if we're appealing to a child, no, we don't want to do that, we want to do this. We're appealing to something which is innately sinful and is innately rebellious, and so is not going to seek to follow the commands of God. And that's what he's saying. It's impervious. A fallen man is impervious to all appeals that may come to him. Don't you want to be holy? Don't you want to be righteous? Well, a man in the condition of their sin says, no, I don't want to be holy. And so they learn how to work the system, I think somebody said. So, it's a complete failure to realize what sin has done to man. Finally, E, there is a complete misunderstanding of the doctrine of the atonement and of redemption and of the cardinal doctrine of regeneration. Why is this a complete misunderstanding of the atonement? We touched on it at the start.
What my dad said about God punished sin in Christ at the cross. He shows His holiness and His love.
Yeah. Lloyd-Jones says it brilliantly. So it shows God's holiness and pouring out wrath and His love in saving sinners. And listen to Lloyd-Jones on this. This is the distortion of what modern men have done to the cross. Page 48, they see nothing but sentimentality in the cross. They see cruel soldiers putting to death the Son of God, who nevertheless smiles upon them and says, I will forgive you, though you have done this to me. Now that's true, right? But is that the essence of the atonement? What's the essence of the atonement? God pouring His wrath on His Son. I must pour out my justice. It's not some soldiers who spit on Jesus and Jesus said, I love you anyway. And the modern man goes, oh, isn't that nice? Such a nice display of love. And they miss the whole picture of God pouring out His justice on His own Son to atone for your sins, because God is a holy God. It pleased the Father to crush Him, Isaiah says in Isaiah 53.
And I think they don't understand that even though Jesus gave His life, when you reject that, the wrath of God is still coming.
Yes.
It's not like it's all gone.
Yes.
And, yeah.
But see, if you do away with God's wrath being poured on Jesus, you do away with God's wrath altogether. Because there was never any wrath to begin with. Jesus just came to show us, hey guys, this is what love is. This is how we love each other. So I'm dying, to show you this love. That's what it's just a sentimental, little emotional love. But they've done away with the wrath of God. And what Debbie said is, if you realize that God has this justice and wrath, and He poured it on Christ, it means this: if you reject Christ, there is still wrath for you. You are still under, as Ephesians 2 says, the wrath of God, like the rest of mankind. Which ought to be a plea for us to run to Christ, because He's absorbed it all. But modern man has a complete misunderstanding of the doctrine of the atonement and the cardinal doctrine of regeneration. We've got just a moment here. Let me just read the quote there from page 50 from Lloyd-Jones. He says, and we'll get more into this, God willing, next time, the biblical teaching is that because man is a fallen creature, because he is a sinner and a rebel, because he is a creature of lust and passion and governed by them, he must be forcibly restrained. He must be kept in order. The principle applies alike to children and to adults who are guilty of misdemeanor and crime, and a departure from the law of the land and from the law of God. Try any other method, and you will have a return to chaos, as we are already beginning to experience. The biblical teaching, founded upon the character and being of God and recognizing that man is in a state of sin, requires that law must be enforced in order that men may be brought to see and to know God. Next, that they may be brought into grace, so that finally they may be brought to own and obey the higher law under which they delight in pleasing God and honoring and keeping His holy commandments. End quote. That's excellent. I think this chaos that we're beginning to see, the illustration of Anders Breivik is certainly an example, but we see it all about us. The misunderstanding of discipline is leading to a world of chaos, and Lloyd-Jones is saying the solution is in the cross. The solution is in the nature of God. Any closing thoughts?
That last statement, E, the one that I'm talking about, I think that's pervasive in a lot of Christian churches.
Yes.
I never was taught about atonement. It was all about, He was a God of love. Jesus died on the cross because He loved you. But I never understood the atonement, the propitiation.
Right.
That's just like,
it's
awesome. That letter E, I'm going to
It's an element. If you miss that in the gospel, you miss the gospel. Well, let's pray. Father, thank you for this word. I pray that your Holy Spirit would use it in our lives. In Christ's name, amen.